Hello. Wherever you're joining us from today, we want to say a huge welcome to our global community. We hope that you're enjoying the Customer Marketing Summit. I also want to send out an extra special thank you to all our sponsors, partners, and participants who together have made this event possible. We are also delighted to welcome Crowdvocate as our headline sponsor today. Their sessions are bursting with insights to help you level up. But remember, the learning doesn't stop here. If you haven't already, you can upgrade your pass to include access to all today's sessions on demand with our Access All Areas pass. Or you can become a PMA Pro member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, and our entire library of videos and slide decks from our events. And remember, have your questions at the ready. Simply post your question in the comments section and get awesome advice from an expert in the field. What's not to love about that? So now, on to the next talk.
Welcome everyone to our panel on how to increase product adoption and communicate new releases effectively. Why don't we go around the room and do quick introductions about yourself and where you're based. So we'll start with you, Alex. The top.
Thanks, Kim. Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. Rose and team at PMA always put on such a great show, great event, especially virtual. My name's Alex Connors. I run customer marketing for a company called NS1. We are in the application traffic routing space. Customers include companies like Roblox, Dropbox, Zscaler. I am based in New York City, but my role touches customers globally, and super excited to be here.
Cool, Kanishka.
Hi everyone, I'm Kanishka Pandit. I'm a product marketing manager in Zscaler, and I'm responsible for one of the products that's part of the platform, and very excited to be here because I see a lot of people from the cybersecurity space as part of Product Marketing Alliance. And as Alex mentioned, it's a great show to gain more knowledge, and I'm hoping that this panel, everyone in this panel and outside, sort of learn from each other so that we can do a better job at what we're doing on a customer marketing platform.
Awesome. I'm Kimberly Lim. I'm based in Auckland, New Zealand. I look after the marketing function here at easyvet, a cloud-based business software for veterinary professionals around the world. So a very targeted niche market, so to speak. I don't think any of our clients would be watching this, but there's a lot of concepts that we use that we could share throughout to any product marketing team. So at easyvet, we're a small but growing marketing team. So I do look after or do product partnerships and content. They all fall under my remit as well. So yeah, very excited to be here with Alex and Kanishka. So during this webinar or this panel, please feel free to pop in any questions that you have throughout. And I love doing this when I do webinars. I invite everyone in the audience to put in their title and also where they're based. And yeah, let's get started. So one of the first questions we have is, what advice would you give to customer marketing teams who are at the beginning of their journey to build a community? Alex, would you like to take up?
Sure.
Start with this one.
So this is a tough one because it kind of depends on a few things, right? Where your customers are based, how they access your products and how they use their products, and then also where your company is, right? So the first thing, every time we go down the community journey in any of the companies that I've been with, the first conversation or the question we ask ourselves is, are we ready to staff it? And the reason for that is community can be the single greatest place for your customers to land, to build their networks, interact with each other, experience your brand, right? Not just your product, but your brand, your people, your teams across the business. But if you don't have someone to properly staff it and ensure that all of those questions are being answered, it can very quickly turn into a rabbit hole of, ooh, we were totally unprepared for this, and now we don't really know what to do. So that's the first thing. The other thing that we also consider when you're talking about the community, the journey to starting a community, is what is your customer journey, right? So what is the customer's experience with not just your products, but all of your teams? The first experience they have with your brand, all the way through to when they get to that portion where they become an advocate, and then they're, a loyalist, if you will. But it kind of depends on not just where you are in the size of your business, but also where you are in engaging with your customers. Kanishka, I'm sure you have a little bit more feedback on this, just because of the size of Zscaler and the nature of your customers.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you in terms of identifying the customer journey. You really want to see which part of the customer journey is the community belongs at. The engagement with the early adopters of the product, whether it's new feature, that's a great place to sort of bring the customers in, have their feedback, and also it's out in the open, right? So that's you have to have that kind of trust with your user in a community. So I absolutely agree with the understanding the journey and fitting that piece in the community. In my previous roles, actually, as a much smaller organization, because the questions around how do we start the community, right? I think Product Marketing Alliance, I've drawn a lot from their building the community early on, because I was trying to build a community for digital merchandisers. And starting small is a great place. You build a one-on-one, or like almost a 1 to 10 people relationship, and build from there on, and then make that online. Just tactically speaking, what does that translate to from when you build that community in person or as small events that's local, to then taking it online and making it global?
Yeah, you mentioned like people connecting, right? One of the things that we found in the pandemic is opening a Zoom room and pulling some customers in. And I mean, I'm sure attendees gathered, right? We have Kim in Auckland. Kanishka, you're based on the West Coast, but I think you said you're in Toronto today. I'm in New York. So like our networks, no pun intended, working in DNS, have expanded, right? Because we just kind of align with time zones, and customers are now able to engage at a more personal level, without having to beg for funds to go to an event or go to a user conference, or the opportunistic networking, if you will, which is also a nice residual effect.
Totally. And I would chime in here and add that the choosing the right platform for where you grow this community is really important. With the company I'm with, EasyBet, right now, we're very, very lucky to have a Facebook community that was grown actually organically by one of our customers. And it's a good balance between managing all the queries and questions and tips given there on our end, but also kind of letting them do their own thing. So we just need to have our voice somehow in there as an official voice, so that things don't go awry. But it was really nice to have that sort of customer that would proactively go and build their own. So that's what we have. That's really lucky. We're trying to build
the ultimate advocate.
Yeah, totally. I just think we're very lucky to have veterinary professionals who are just very passionate. They're generally a very passionate industry. They love animals. That's why they got into the industry. So that really helps us in that sense. I know it's maybe a bit trickier for you guys because it's really hard to have, I guess, active users who are interested or would rave about networks. But I'm sure there are
You'd
some
be
people
surprised.
Yeah. And we're trying to build a separate one, and we're using Slack. However, that's a platform that's not used. So we are used frequently by our audience or our customers. So it's a bit more challenging to have more people going on there and using it, as opposed to Facebook, because everyone's on Facebook. What platforms do you use or are thinking of using?
Right now,
build?
we have our own website as part of the community building, but I think that, you have to identify who your audience is. Slack may be great for product marketers because we're usually very chatty and, very outgoing, I would say, and very open to asking questions, getting feedback. But if you understand the kind of audience, what kind of platforms do they usually use? Because the people that I interact with right now are network admins, IT, that are usually, they don't like very open, conversations out in the open. They don't want their questions to be out in the open. So I think building that community, starting to know who your audience is great. Our Zscaler community is fairly big, but I do know that there are other companies that do, as you said, Facebook, right? Reddit is a big piece that has all these questions, and it can go a little bit out of control, but just knowing that people engage when they're total tech into technology, Reddit is somewhere they engage a lot. And if you can afford to build your own community within your website, that would be a great forum to explore more conversations.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. It's ideal to have a community forum within our software, our platform. Yeah.
Because then you get all that metadata for SEO and the marketing.
Yeah, totally.
Team really loves you.
And then, yeah. So we do have another kind of community in a way within our software, but it's more a feature request forum where it's very much product geared. So the product team would look after that as opposed to marketing. But there isn't that nice banter, and helpfulness that the community actually brings in.
Well, Kim, you kind of read my mind, because the other question I was going to ask you is a lot of our customers like Slack. I personally am not a huge Slack fan because there's so much going on all the time. And a lot of people use Teams. I think Microsoft 365 with their expansion, especially in COVID, we saw a lot of people switch to leveraging Teams. And it'll be interesting to see who wins that race with the Salesforce acquisition, right, of Slack. Right. But one of the things with community and with Slack in particular, I use Slack for some customer advisory board channels. And the question that always comes up is what happens to support, right? In communities, if they're not kind of combined, right? Like your knowledge base and your support ticketing system, if they're not all in one environment, then does it become more of like a triage center, right?
Yeah.
No pun intended, as your end consumer are doctors or vets.
Yeah.
But does it become a support triage place, or does it become a place where people really, really build community together? In the B2B space, I will say, I think there is, and Kanishka, if you disagree and you aren't familiar, tell me to shut up. But B2B on the infrastructure and network side, SolarWinds, and it pains me because they're an ex-competitor from previous life, but their community they've done a phenomenal job with their community. And I think on the marketing side, you see it with like HubSpot, and even Marketo to a degree did a really, really good job with community building. But yeah.
But yeah, totally. It all comes down to the staffing that you made at the first point, the staffing of it, whether or not
exactly.
It can be manned. And like with our community, if any queries that is a support type query, we would actually say go back to your ticket, and then I think people within the community will get the gist of it and be like, okay, this is not a support forum, this is it's a help forum. Exactly. Or community forum, not a help well, how do I do this, and or support, like I'm having issues, fix it. Yeah. Another thing I would recommend when building a community is determining the output or the activity you want to do, and not do everything, and like what you can leverage your community best for. So there's things like case studies, reviews on online reviews, especially testimonials, I guess, just 2-sentence testimonials you can put on your site, to user-generated content, to referral programs, and depending on the product that you do, influencers as well. So a tip would be to prioritize what you want to collect. Normally people would start with case studies, reviews and testimonials, and put, I guess, a KPI on a number to aim for. Say you want 20 online reviews over the next 3 months, and then that strategy will help you determine what activity you would do to get that number. And similar, like another KPI you could set is 2 in-depth case studies over the next 3 months. Anything you want, and whatever capacity you guys have accordingly.
Are you going to measure it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I apologize for the background noise. It just started pouring in New York. So I'm going to put headphones in so that I have this, like, my apartment has so many windows, which is such a novelty in the city that it's really loud.
We don't hear it, so you're fine.
Okay, good. I'm going to switch to wired headphones. Very vintage of me.
You know, Kim, you raised the right thing in terms of how do you use the community? What's the KPI? I'll give you an example of what we're starting to do with the community as part of product marketing, right? This is an avenue for us to put out the message of the product, the new things that we're releasing, or an event even that we're running for existing customers. And so it's a great forum to connect with your customers for whatever you're running. You know, for example, webinars that are focused on like generating leads. That's one thing that we do outside of like customer marketing. But also if you're trying to upsell new features or new products, and community is a great place to start, because you know that there is everyone's eyes are on it. You just have to get their attention, and we know how to do that, right? Try to get their attention, like make it interesting. But community is a great avenue to put it out there and then have them consume that content, and then gauge the interest.
So that like raises I'm taking notes because great thing to learn as I'm here in real time. But that leads me to another question. Kim, I'm kind of stealing your thunder here on the next question, but Kanishka, how do you balance the difference between where to ask the question when, right? So then one thing that we talk about a lot is products like Pendo for your in-product communication if you're delivered as a SaaS. So how do you differentiate? So, okay, beta, you're as a product marketer with a product team, you want to go to the customer base to get some beta testing on a new version. How do you differentiate between in-app communications, community communications, or does it all look the same? Or is it omni-channel in a situation like that, if you will?
It's a great question. I think you strike a balance, right? Especially for a beta program, you're trying to get as many customers as possible, but you also don't want to exceed the number. Like if it's a product that's really good that everyone wants to be first early adopters on, it's really hard to put it in the community and have everyone say, yes, I want to be part of this. So I think with respect to that, you go slow. And for beta customers, we're usually cherry picking via the product team or the CSMs because they're closest to the customers and know what's right for them. But if it's an event that is focused on upselling, I think community becomes a great place to spread that news. So if you're trying to do anything one to many, and it's a news that you want to share, then community becomes a great source. If it's an update, you're letting them know we have this new feature, try it on, like what Pendo does, in-app communications become great. So from my experience, what I've learned is that every type of request or suggestion uses a different channel, and maybe omnichannel becomes a little bit of a bombarding way in this case, because if you're trying to update the customer, you do it in an app, and then you do it in a newsletter, you do it in the community, and then it just becomes like, whoa, like it's too much, you're telling me 7 times.
Yeah. That's such a hard balance, because my view is opposite, because we have so many customers that don't like, they literally tell me, don't email me, I hate it.
Right.
We like Slack. And we're like, okay, so we'll use Slack. And then some are like, we don't use Slack or email, we just don't talk to people. And you're like, okay, so do we say prayers? Like, how do we tell you when something's about to change? Smoke signals?
Mind reading.
Exactly. And some just want to talk to their CSM.
So do you have, for Alex, for your company, do you have any in-app type product, in-app tool like Pendo?
We are actually in final stages of rolling it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We at EasyBit, our product marketer is looking at app queues. So
Okay.
that's another tool. She looked at Pando as well, but I think app queues were more suited to our needs.
Yeah.
But before before this has been rolled out, I actually did something in app, which you guys will probably like to hear about. It's to do with NPS surveys. It's more of a survey tool. So it is still an app, but it is really just a way to just collect feedback. So we ran a trial for a couple of months about the invoicing screen on our software, and we got like tremendous amounts of responses. I know it's a balance of it's a balance between not annoying the customer too much as they're working in the software and actually getting good feedback from our product team. But I think the positive, the actual responses, the number of responses is a positive that outweighs the few that go, stop bugging me.
Well, that means you're doing it at the right time.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think it I can't even remember the numbers, but it was like 500% more than email responses. The response rate had like more than, yeah, just because everyone's in the software, not everyone's checking emails all the time. And our user base is so diverse from the decision maker to just the nurse or the receptionist. So it's, and this tool helps with this segment of that.
Which tool did you use, if you don't mind me asking?
AppQ, Refiner.
Okay.
Yeah, Refiner. They're really good company. I think they were starting up as we were doing, so they're always building and always improving, and we like that. And I think that the CEO is the support person as well. And or he puts his name there, so he responds real quick, and it's just a good tool for anyone who's wanting to do anything in app just to get started with. It's really easy to use, and we initially wanted it for NPS, but then we ended up doing the invoice survey instead. But you can ask any question. So that's one that I recommend.
That's really
brand advocacy there for Refiner.
And you're yeah, and you're really lucky if customers are giving you positive feedback when you're simultaneously asking them to pay their bills, because that doesn't always happen at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's feedback, good or bad, it doesn't matter. Like, in customer marketing, we just want feedback, right?
Yes.
Good or bad, I think we'll cover that later in the panel. But as long as you're getting feedback and responses, that's the most important part. That's our job. And then how it gets funneled through, it's after. We'll
exactly.
talk about that later.
Here's the information. Just do something with it.
Yeah, do something with it. Improve.
Exactly.
Do better. Or good job. Cool. So that leads on to the next question. The customer obsessed approach to upselling. How do you focus on the existing customer base, or improve adoption, make them sticky, and eventually upsell with confidence? Kanishka, would you like to start with that one?
Absolutely. And as part of what we do for our customers, eventually the goal is to increase the share of wallet, right? And we're all aware that in terms of KPIs, just getting the customer or prospect to be a customer, that takes the longest period of time, because the sales cycle is long. No matter how long it is, it's not 2 days ever, right? So you're trying to get the customer or prospect to be a customer. So if you identify what's the easiest approach to getting more revenue, is really increasing the share of wallet of the existing customer. And so upsell, even in Zscaler, upsell becomes a huge part of what we do, because we're focused on existing customer, whether it is keeping them happy and keeping them as a customer, making them sticky. And it's not a one team process. It's everybody who's customer facing is part of this strategy for upsell. But as part of product marketing or customer marketing, in the case of Zscaler, we're all developing a program to make sure that the customer is happy, and finding that balance about you're getting 7 emails per day versus like 1 email that really has value. So I can tell you from Zscaler point of view, we go through a full program on like, what are we going to do in the next couple of quarters that will help this customer reach their ultimate goal with Zscaler. We're also coordinating the CSMs because they have this sort of maturity model where the customer starts at some point, and then we have an ideal goal as to where that customer should be. And if you are breaking them down by, let's say, the size of the company or the vertical they belong to, then everybody has a different life cycle to reach that maturity model, to reach the maturity process in the maturity model. So the program essentially is helping customers interact with more than the CSM team, right? So whether it's customer marketing, product marketers, or technology folks on our side who are constantly talking to customer, and to do it in a scalable way. We're not trying to do a one-on-one approach. So we run constant webinars. I mean, just to give you ideas on what we're doing with our existing customers, we do webinars that really are focused not on the product, but like industry knowledge. I mean, every time I try to build a program like this, I'm always thinking about not how to use a software, but like, how can I improve my career and be awesome at my company, right? And that's how we engage with the customer. Like, how can you be a rock star in your company? And that always sells because everyone wants to do well and be amazing at their jobs. So we're trying to get them to be more engaged, not just with us, but like showcase ourselves in the industry as well. So getting the customers to speak in these webinars are a big wins. They're big wins because that means that they're engaged with Zscaler, but they're also trying to shine within the industry. So for upsells, really, like, we're trying to build programs for the next couple of quarters and see whether we have to run webinars, whether we do these roundtables in smaller settings where customers can talk to each other and, you know, talk about their grievances, whether it's, they usually don't talk, you know, grievances about Zscaler, but then generally their life, because they're using so many tools and they use tools that are very overlapping in the sense. So, but we host these meetings. And so then we gain knowledge from what they want, what their ambitions are within the company. And it's a great way to know the customer at a personal level without having to do it at a one-on-one level. Yeah.
You know,
Totally. Yeah.
you mentioned the maturity model, and I've been a part of companies who have used maturity models in the past as a prospecting tool. It can be really challenging to do for your install base. How do you, who owns that? Who starts that process? And how, I'm going a little off script here, but I think it's a really, really valuable thing. It kind of goes back to, so you have the customer journey, and then when the customer journey ends, you have the maturity model, and they kind of sort of overlap. Where do you even begin with that?
That's
I'd
right.
like to know that too.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Appropriate. That's appropriate. Where do you begin, right? Because we're also within the organization trying to not step on each other's toes. Like, where does the customer journey end and where does the customer maturity model begin? We are trying to really collaborate a lot with the customer success team, because we're really, like, I think typically in my previous organizations, I've seen that the customer success team and the marketing team, they're almost like two different divisions within the company. They're a customer, and then bam, marketing's out, right? And then customer success takes over. Even the pre-sales team, for all you know, is out because
don't let the door hit you on the way out. You're right.
Yeah. They've signed the deal. Now it's not on
leave.
Yeah.
No.
Why so many of us sit in CSM works? I sit in marketing, but a lot of customer marketers sit in customer success or services.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. Our customer marketing currently sits in marketing itself, but we definitely, I mean, it's irrelevant because we definitely coordinate a whole bunch with the customer success team, and we follow the maturity model of the customer success team right now, because they, you know, typically a customer starts with one product or like a piece of the product, and then we can either upsell or cross-sell more things to them. And so the maturity model is built based on that. If you're spending $10,000 with us right now, that's one piece of the product, but how can we take you to the level where, you know, you're spending $1 million with us? And I'm just spitting out numbers here, but can be anything, right? It's like 10x proportion of what you're spending right now. So So having said that, customer marketers, and we show that to the customer, like, you're here today and it's not about the money, it's about the value we will bring to you. You're here today and this is the value you're getting from your current contract. But if we can slowly take you there where the value is so high, you wouldn't care how much you're paying, right? So, and that I think is a very transparent, open process with the customer, the buyer,
Right.
where we're showing them how we can get there with our current product.
Yeah, and your team, Kanishka, would or the product team would set the levels and the tiers.
So the customer marketing team typically sets where they should
Okay.
go, but my team, the product marketing team, definitely supports it with respect to content, right? We're spread across the customer journey and the customer maturity process, because our content and our programs that the product marketing team develops is used across the board, which is why, to me, sitting in product marketing, I don't differentiate between pre-sales and post-sales, because even after post-sales, there's so much more we can do with them than, you know, after they sign. And this is to me like something that I've learned in Zscaler. I think that we do it really well. It's a very collaborative process here. So, you know, it's not that marketing is just sitting in the pre-sales part where once you're signed, we're out of the picture. No, we're not. Product marketing is definitely looking at the funnel even after the customer has signed, because we're looking at many ways to upsell to existing customer base.
Yeah. Alex, have you got anything to add about upselling with confidence?
My mind is spinning, but upselling with confidence was not where it went. I think upsell also depends on how your team's laid out, right? So in some circumstances, all of your upsell sits with the original account team, and that's more relationship-based upsell. In other circumstances, your CS team is comped on your upsell, right? So it kind of depends on who your thought partner is in that. I can say in my role today, it straddles. New products sits with the account team, upsell sits with a different group. But then the flip side of that is cross-sell, which we haven't even talked about, right? And that's where I think, Kanishka, to your point on having someone who understands the entire journey, the entire life cycle of the customer, from prospect through to when they're buying more product, not differentiating between pre and post is 100% accurate, because as you're cross-selling products, your customers are looking at that new product as a new person. And in some circumstances, they're a new persona too, which is
Right.
all kinds of fun, right? Kim, you probably see this a lot, right? You know, you go into an office, maybe they have one or two vets, maybe 3 nurses, or maybe they're just like 1 vet, 1 nurse, office person, or maybe they don't even have someone at the desk. And then as their practice grows, it's like, okay, now all of a sudden we have a completely different person that we're talking to, who's not a doctor, not a nurse, but they might be an unbelievable office manager, or they might be the person that's dealing with just invoicing, and their experience with the product and the value that they can derive from the product is going to be so much different, and probably
so different.
bigger scaled than what a vet or what a nurse or so on and so forth would see. So I think part of it is, are you upselling or are you cross-selling? And then are you upselling to the same person, or are you upselling to a group as the product scales and people are adopting more of the product? I kind of went off script a little bit there, but
No, that's cool.
it's definitely it's definitely circumstantial.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, because in our company, with upselling within the software, it's like turning on integrations like with partners. Hence why we work very closely to push that, especially partnerships that would drive both revenue for both on both sides. But it really depends on who makes that call. So for us, usually it's still the decision maker, even though it impacts every other user as well and makes their workflow better, for example.
Yeah.
This leads on to the question, because you bring up segments and personas. Do you have a clear segmentation and buyer persona or user persona approach? Kanishka, you're nodding.
Well, you know, I want to say, put that in the chat below. Do you, as the audience, really?
If you have a way to do it, give us all of your secrets.
Yeah, no, identifying personas, right? Is that the question you're trying to ask? Like, what do we know who the persona we're talking to?
Yeah, how do you manage the persona? Like, do you have personas created, and how closely do you tie that into your content and how you talk to?
Yeah, yeah, and this comes to, yeah, absolutely. It comes to the what do we do after the customer journey? Because I think when we do the target market analysis or analysis of who your target persona is, generally we're very clear on who the buyer is, and so what's the message that goes to the buyer. Whereas in the post, once they're a customer, we need to engage with the actual admins of the tool or the people who use the tool. And that's an easy, I wouldn't say easy, but like that's the straightforward way to get to more upsells, because if they're happy with the product, hopefully they'll tell it to their leaders and managers, and our voice is heard internally, and then there's a champion within the company that really helps us. So in terms of personas, typically what I've done is try to go after the people who are using the product, and we've spoken about Endo a little bit, and that has helped really see who engages most with the product. And a champion may be only the person who knows enough about the product, has trained people internally, but who's actually using the product? How much time have they spent on that product? And I know that Gainsight had a thing like this in the past, where their CSMs would call out people in the organization that they're talking to by saying that, hey, this person's been on Gainsight for like 15 hours in the last week. Is their account turning red, or like what's up with that person? So it's a great way to find out who's in your tool a lot, and that whether that persona fits who you're trying to sell to. And then you're engaging or building content for people like that who are on the tool a whole lot, and then engage with, whether it's in-app, whether it's newsletters, you send something a little bit extra to them.
I'm so glad you mentioned Gainsight, because I was only shouting out Pendo, and I have a lot of friends at Gainsight who would not be happy with me if they knew that we didn't talk about Gainsight in this context at all. So I'm so glad you mentioned it.
But yeah, just off the question, do you guys use Gainsight at all as part of customer marketing, or is that just the CSM team?
We
don't use Gainsight. No.
Gainsight's awesome. Awesome. I've been to their events.
For those who don't know Gainsight, what is Gainsight? Is it a CRM tool or a ticketing tool?
Kanishka, I'm going to let you take it, because
yeah, so
I haven't used it enough.
I have used Gainsight because I think I did. I'm not sure I mentioned in my introduction, I was a customer success manager before I moved to product marketing. It's a great tool for everything customer success, that it brings together. It combines with the CRM. We used to use Salesforce at the time. So it combines with your existing CRM to bring all the value that you need about a certain customer. So whether it's the health of the customer, what's the engagement your customer has on your tool today, and then a great way for CSMs to engage with existing customers and then record everything that they've done on that platform. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of tools customer marketing, customer success can use, but I know that we all rely on Excel a whole lot. You don't disagree.
It's horrendous. It's so bad. We didn't even get into it. I got into this in the last panel I did for the Customer Marketing Summit back in the spring, but customer data is like the single hardest thing to collect.
Yes.
However, Gainsight is awesome. Awesome. Can't say enough great things about it, but it's expensive and you need to have a large team to maintain it. The cool thing about Gainsight, in my view, is they established CSM as a true role, right? Like they established customer success. Awesome content, awesome events. Shout out to my good friend, Lauren Ulrich, who used to run their events for Europe. But there are other great tools out there. We use a product called Client Success, which is like a very fun confusion when I am on a call and I say to people, well, I'll talk to Client Success. And they're like, you mean the CSMs? And I'm like, no, I mean like the system. Like I'll log in and do some searching in there. And they're like, it's called that? I'm like, yeah, it's probably not great branding, but it's awesome. It's my source of truth for everything. It sits on top of Salesforce. You can pull reports, you can identify your champions, you can identify who's using it. You can do some targeted emailing, because that's another thing that's like really important. It depends on, and we're talking SaaS, right? But it depends on where you put your upsell, your renewal dates. Like, where are you doing your invoicing? Who's doing your invoicing? How are you doing your invoicing? And any kind of customer success platform, if it doesn't all sit in Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or whatever other, HubSpot has a version of it too, it's kind of hard to schedule those upsell nurtures and conversations with the right lead up if you aren't using the right source of truth. Because listen, we can all sit here and pretend like everyone listening in has a single source of truth, and that would make all of us liars, because every company has a lot of different systems.
I would second that like completely, because we don't even have something like Gainsight to house everything, anything from customer sentiment. We all use different tools. Excel is still very much heavily used. And we just need to figure out a way to make it work with what we're trying to achieve, and try to bring people on the journey with us. And for my company, we really have two types. We've got buyer personas and user personas. We've got about 60,000 users that we haven't really grouped. Like marketing hasn't really grouped and separated as yet. So that's like the next thing we'll be doing, and we'll probably have the help with the in-app tool. But the first step for anyone starting out would be to create those personas and do interviews with and speak to the customer about their pain points, to put that together so you can have a holistic view. That makes sense. Yeah.
The other thing I'll say on personas too, and I'm sure you've both seen this, is this last quarter, I've been spending a lot of time doing customer interviews on kind of like, what is your new biggest priority? And the one thing that I've seen pretty consistently is COVID shifted priorities for people. COVID shifted, Roblox is a customer of ours, and you talk to Roblox and they say, oh, we had a lot more users playing video games during disparate times, with kids being home, right? And kids not being out as much, and more users than they had previously. So Kim, to your point on personas, I'm sure you've seen this in your business, right? Like so in the States and other countries as well, everybody got a new pet in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And what does that do for vets, right? They can't have people coming into the office for checkups and sick visits. So now you're doing even more online, which probably grew your community and probably grew your user base and probably grew your traffic, right? All of those things that happened organically, but people's personas have changed because people's goals have changed. And I don't know if this is an experience that you all are seeing, and please, I encourage you to leave this in the chat as well. But for us, what we've seen is it doesn't really matter what industry people are in. Goals have changed everywhere. Priorities have changed everywhere, and they're not really going back anytime soon because they're doing more with less. They're optimizing more. So I think that also, you constantly have to look at your personas because they're going to continuously shift. Kind of like the sunlight behind me that's now gone.
It's dark. When we started, there was light, and now it's dark. Exactly.
You would never know that Kanishka and I are like on the same coast.
That's true.
I think we've got time for one last question about the customer feedback itself. Like, how do we create efficient feedback at scale, and what we do with handling negative feedback, and how we can loop it back into the product roadmap. I could start with this one.
I was going to say, you have the organic community. You start, because I want to know how you scale that feedback with 60,000 users.
So with the actual feedback loop that we create, we don't pull in. We haven't had a system to pull in individual feedback in a holistic view from the community itself, but we do so by way of the NPS surveys and those tools that we use in app. But then we do set guidelines and a process of what happens if it's a detractor, a passive, or a promoter. So that's very important to follow up after you've got that feedback through. And we've also created a dashboard with using the NPS survey results. And we're using the power of BI, but there are a lot of tools out there that are probably come with any software that you use to collect NPS scores and feedback. And from there you can do word mapping and anything that there is a theme that's going on in that feedback, and then bring it to the product team, for example. And for us, it's usually the product team that would benefit most from any sort of feedback, because it's always about we ask how likely would you be to recommend EasyVet, and usually it's about the product, whether it's a feature or functionality, or if the performance is not so good, the feedback needs to go to the product team. So we're still building on closing the loop to the product team, but we do have an efficient loop already by actioning and by doing a follow-up with dependent on the scores. Yeah.
Very cool. Who maintains the Power BI? Does marketing maintain that?
No, we have a business analyst that maintains that. Yeah, amongst other things, but yes, we collaborate with him, and he pulls in all the data that's needed, and then we tell him what we want showing.
Can I ask you a follow-up question on the feedback? Like, if it's not product feedback, what else are the customers talking about?
Support. So I created 4 different theme categories, so to speak. So after they ask how likely are you to recommend EasyVet, there would be 4 categories to pick from, because after analyzing the open feedback, I realized there's actually really 4. So one is support, so that's customer support. It could be also to do with their onboarding, so that falls under support. And then there's EasyVet features, so that features functionality. There's site performance, and what is the last one? No, actually I can't recall what the last one was. There's one more, and then there's other. So it's just putting them into categories and then making it easier to wrap up for the product team. The 4th one will come to me.
Yeah, no, thank you for answering that, because typically in the feedback loop, it is about the product, and it is about what their experience on the product is. It's really hard to scale, honestly. Like, we have a lot of users, and it's very difficult to gather all the things and then also help prioritize. And speaking of Excels from earlier, what we used to do in my previous organization also is collect all that information, like have a representative from every department, like CSNs discuss with each other, and then have like a report of 10 things that they want to see in the next 6 months. And support would get this information from all the emails that they get about the product, and then those are 10 things that we need to consider. And the consolidation happens where product marketing, customer marketing, and the product team would sit together, review these 40-50 features and say, no, from a messaging point of view, from the company or market point of view, can we take these top 5 things and then let the product team prioritize based on resources and everything else that they do? Because it's not only important to service your existing customers and take their feedback, but it's also important to hear what prospects have to say, because you want to expand that business as well. And one of the courses that I took a few years ago did talk about how listening to your existing customers is almost like only listening to a person who shouts a lot, and that's why you're doing that person's job. But you also have to listen to people who are not as loud as, this person. So doing that market research in terms of not just customers, but also your prospects really helps you expand as a business, because then you're not only focusing on what people want today, but also what people are looking for in your product that's not available. And one of the ways that we used to do that is win-loss analysis. And I know I'm going
took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, it really helps. And I think, as is life, right? Losses teach you a lot more than wins do. And so definitely a part of what we do as part of product marketing and customer marketing, it's not just about the customer, but also prospects. Eventually, your goal is to expand your business.
Yeah. Win-loss analysis can be very humbling experiences. I will say
do another panel on this one.
Oh, literally. But they're gold. Yeah. They're gold. I find as a marketer, they're gold because you so quickly learn if you're positioning something wrong. And you so quickly learn what the analysts are saying about you a lot of times. But, going back to the feedback loop, CSMs, if we're talking about scale, right, outside of surveys and things like that, CSM feedback is invaluable. Like, this is going to sound so trivial, but we talked about segmenting NPS detractors, right? But look at your support tickets. What are people complaining about in support tickets? Where are their most requested feature requests? It's very easy to get hung up on the 5 feature requests from your largest customer.
Totally.
Reevaluating engineering. But does that scale your business? Is that because at the end of the day, yes, cash is king, but are you going to make more money? Or it sounds so terrible, but are you going to grow your business with your largest customer now? Or are you going to grow your business by looking at, say your average sale is $15,000 a year, right? Why are people only spending $5,000 a year? What's stopping them from spending 6, 7, 8 versus looking at the customer who's spending $50,000 a year and probably not going to spend much more? So support tickets are really, really good for that. And then some of that one-to-many communication can also give you some of that feedback. I'll leave you with one last thing on the, and I should have mentioned this in the upsell conversation, but there's a company called Catchpoint. They're based in New York. Did some partnering with them, but also we sat down with their CSM team and just said, and some of their customer marketing team, and just kind of had like a brain trust day. We were like, let's just like spitball some ideas and see what's happening. This was pre-pandemic when we could meet in the office, and it was like really fun to bring in lunch and, have a day. But they took their entire customer base and split them in a quadrant. And it was like top left were their largest customers who probably weren't going to spend a lot more money. Top right that was where they wanted to focus. And those were, I don't even know how many customers they have. Say they have 200 customers. Those were like 30 to 50 accounts where they said, we are underservicing them. And if we just paid a little bit more attention, it wasn't even attached to money. It was attached to stickiness. How do we give them a better experience with our platform? And they saw amazing results. And it wasn't even, the financial results come if your customers like you, right? Like that's just a given. But what they saw was an increase in NPS, an increase in retention, an increase in just overall customer satisfaction, because they were able to focus on customers that were like happy, but what were the features that were going to change the game for their customer experience versus the features that are nice to have for your already most loyal customers. And I know everyone's loyal customers, their ears are probably burning because they feel like they're going to be ignored, but we're not ignoring you. We're just telling you that if we improve what we're the best at, it's going to be that much better of an experience for you and your team. And it's going to be upgradable.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah, writing notes as you were talking about. Cool. And the last one is about handling negative customer feedback. Kanishka, would you like to share on how you utilize negative feedback in a product aspect? Yeah.
I think it's, you take a step back and say, this is constructive feedback. And as I suggested earlier, it's not just about doing what's required right now, but also, so most of the negative feedback is around, you don't have this, so I'm not going to upgrade to the next level, or, your competitor does this better. Well, we're getting there, or, we're probably not headed in that direction, because that's one thing to also note with existing customers, is that you're also trying to be honest with, that's not the direction we want to take our company, because that's, one of the things that we always talk about in Zscaler is also identity management. And there's a lot of companies that do it really, really well. And we're not getting into that space. So when we talk about cybersecurity, it's just a whole spectrum of things that you can do. And I faced this even in previous roles where they ask, can you do this? And you just have to be honest with that customer that we're not headed in that direction, and we can partner obviously with a whole bunch of companies that do something similar. But in terms of taking that negative feedback, take a step back and say, this is just constructive criticism about the product, about the process. And, a lot of it is operational as well. You take that feedback, brainstorm as a team, if this is something that you do or not. Actually, I have a great example. This is from years ago. I used to work at Fisher-Price, owned by Mattel. And it was such a fun place to work because it's all about toys. And what you do every day as part of market research is just watch from behind a screen what kids are doing with the toys. And it is a lot of negative criticism on the product, because some of them would not touch the toy that you developed, expecting a 4-year-old to play with it. And so it was never taken personally. It's more about what can we do next so that toy is attractive compared to everything else in the room, right? So whether it's the colors, whether it's something that makes sound, you just have to understand what a 4-year-old wants to engage with, and then stick to that and take that to the next level. So I think of that a whole lot when we receive negative criticism, because it's about, maybe they don't understand that this is to be used in a certain way, whether it's documentation, showing demo videos, whatever helps the case with that customer, right? So that's how I look at it. It's not always negative. It's about whether there's a miscommunication or it's not meant to be used in a certain way.
Yeah, I would say acknowledge it. Yeah, acknowledge it, maybe do a bit more research and then respond appropriately. It's like, thank you for your feedback, because it's their point of view.
Yeah.
It's not us to change it. But then it's for us to say, okay, this is what we're going to do to fix this or improve. Whether or not and how long that would take, that's another story. But as long as you acknowledge it, I think people would just want to be heard sometimes. Yeah.
The Fisher-Price analogy is such a good one. And the reason I say that is because if a 4-year-old tells you that they don't like something, you're not offended. You ask them why, and then you move on.
Yeah.
So if we all, I might have just given you a new tagline or like a new catchphrase to use in a meeting, but if we all approach product feedback as it's coming from a 4-year-old, not a big customer or an engineer or a user, we probably would take things a lot less personally. And you probably would take it from, because the one thing about kids that I appreciate is they're very literal and they see things for exactly what they are, and they give you feedback with zero filter. And we've all become so filtered that maybe that's the best way, to ask the question. Like, if I were to really simplify this, what don't you like and why?
Yeah.
And sometimes a kid doesn't like a toy and you're like, well, tough, nothing's going to change. And other times they don't like a toy and you're like, you make a very good point. Let's choose a different one.
Yeah.
And if you approach it that way, it's a little easier probably to make product decisions, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. The tip for feedback, treat it like it came from a 4-year-old.
Your feelings won't be as hurt, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it's about time to wrap up now. I mean, I think we've gone a little bit over time, but it's just so much to learn. Like I said, I was taking notes, but I think this will all be recorded anyway, and and be shared out to everyone to review in your own time. And if anyone wants to get in touch with us directly, you can find us through LinkedIn and carry on the conversation there. And I'll definitely be carrying it on with you guys. So good
Thank
meeting
you,
you.
guys.
Yeah.
This was such a great time. Thank you all, and hope to chat with everyone in the chat later today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alex. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Kanishka. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.
Thank you.